Recovering Queen. The Queen fan podcast where we talk about and play the songs we love. With Jay, Matt, and Ian.
Welcome to Recovering Queen, the Queen podcast, where we take a famous, or not so famous, Queen track, do a cover version of that Queen track, and then talk about the methods and the madness of the greatest band of all time, Queen. I am the Emperor Ming, and here, as ever, are three puny humans. Jay, Matt, and Ian.
Good evening, gentlemen. That was the magnificent Moog Gravit doing the intro for us. And where he said three puny humans, well, yes, he's right. There are three puny humans, but we also have a guest magnificent human with us. He is music producer, director, educator at the University of Central Lancaster, a friend of Tim Staffel, I understand. And most significantly, he is Queen scholar. Please welcome Tony Rigg. Good evening, Tony.
Applaud myself here. Just imagine everyone out there in listener world cheering now.
Yeah. Cheering, yeah, well, that's what we do every time, yeah.
I should just say it's the University of Central Lancashire. A lot of people actually say University of Central Lancaster. There is those as well, University of Lancaster, but...
Well, just goes part of our rich tradition of making factual errors on the show. So no change there. Well, Tony, welcome. It's an absolute joy to have you on here. Not only are you appearing as a guest, but you contributed to this evening's track we're talking about. So please, put the listeners out of their misery. What track are we talking about tonight?
Well, a quick clue, what would it be that it came out in 1980? But I've actually just realised that they'll probably see the title, won't they, when they...
I don't even know why I even asked the question.
Come on, Tony, come on, play the game.
And kind of,
suspense, it's Flash. Flash's theme.
Excellent. Yes, the 1980 May classic. Is it, from off of the album of the same name. And the original soundtrack, and of course the floor cleaning advert, most famously.
Yeah, toilet duck.
Yeah, it's kind of found a new niche there, didn't it? Really, advertising, sanitary products.
That really does hurt me. That when they take a classic, any classic song, and put it in an advert and change the words, come on, it's not the best.
I should actually, did I say sanitary? I meant sanitizing products.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Wrong.
It's only a matter of time.
It's going downhill already, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I must have, having listened to because we obviously listen to each other's versions before we come on. Having listened to that, I actually can't believe it was released as a single.
And it's mad, isn't it?
I mean, it's like there's very little song in there, isn't there? I mean, even though it is Ace, though, it is an Ace song actually, but there's not much of it. It's mostly sort of clips from the film with a little bit of song in there.
Yeah, it would be very disappointing without all of those clips, wouldn't it? Because the clips are what make it. I was reading on a board earlier on, and people talking about Flash and. Almost universally, everyone was saying, I remember quoting all of those, all of those things, Gordon's alive, but, Clytus on board. They're just so quotable, aren't they? They're just something that makes you want to repeat them. It's all tied up in the film. And I think, without all those bits, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it wouldn't be a song, would it? Would it be a song without those bits? It'd be a blinking short song.
I tell you, the big miss out of all the clips of the film is that it doesn't get the Brian Blessed shouting "Who wants to live forever," which I always think's a big miss. That one line doesn't make it onto the Queen album.
No, but they were saving that
because of the callback.
No, but they were saving that for kind of magic, weren't they, Matt?
Well, exactly. Well, that's my point.
I noticed Ian's been quite quiet here because Ian put this together. So, and obviously I was invited to contribute. But as with Queen, whilst it might sound like there's not a lot to it, there actually is.
Oh my God, it's so much more complicated than you think.
It is, incredibly intricate and nuanced. And actually, if you start to analyse, what it's doing, it is quite remarkable. It might be worth me mentioning that the bits that I was asked to do, one of them was the bass, but I ended up asking a good friend, Les Gillen, to do the bass firstly, because he's better than me, and secondly, because he's better than me at playing bass. But I also roped in a good friend who, his name's Paul Hutchinson, and he runs a recording studio called Northwest Recording Studios. So obviously I had the access to his brilliant studio as well. But Paul had actually recorded 2 albums with Roy Thomas Baker as the producer. And he also recorded in Mountain Studios in Montreux. So he'd kind of got a good sense. He's kind of had this education on how Queen recorded vocals. So I was sort of channeling his expertise. Plus the fact is that when I first heard the record and when I first got it, it was like it was actually my first album was the soundtrack that I ever owned. And it came out, I got it a little bit after it came out, but it was, within a few months. And, when you're 10, you're not really analysing it from a musicological perspective. Well, I was. No, I'm only joking. But, you're not really, you're listening to it through different ears, aren't you? Yeah. And the way I remembered it was, heavily imprinted from that point in time. So when we came to actually analyse and try and recreate what Queen had done, I'd got Paul in my team. So, he had that, but he also had a more objectivity because perhaps unsurprisingly, whilst things may sound simple from a Queen, when you're listening to Queen, it's incredibly nuanced, incredibly layered. There's lots of different aspects that when you start to dissect it, it's I guess it's one of the things that make Queen so different, and that you can actually, all these layers, I think, mean that you can keep getting more and more out of the record. Some people will want to scrutinise it and sort of really get into what Queen are doing, and others will just want to go flash. So
yeah, I mean,
but yeah, there's loads to it.
There really is. I found the Saviour of the Universe harmonies particularly difficult to work out what's going on there. It was so difficult. I think because you sent me those harmonies to go kind of on top and with mine, and I think you've really nailed what the notes are going on those harmony bits, because I was trying all kinds of parallel stuff and those adjacent notes that Sam Swallow was telling us about in a few episodes ago, and I couldn't work out what's going on. And obviously, it's not one of those tracks where you can just go online and say, "Give me the harmonies for Flash." It's just not there.
No, it's like a block of sound. It took us ages. We'd sort of allocated one day, but no, of course not. That wouldn't be enough because it's Queen. And so we had to go back in a second day. But actually, when you start to listen to it, they sing it a bit differently every time as well. Because they're not the Flash RR. We'd worked it out as triads, so there was a sort of slightly different inversion because all of the parts, it's like they worked out the parts as individual melodies rather than playing a straight chord and singing a note on the chord. And then on the top of it, you've got Roger with these ridiculously high harmonies. What apparently they did was Freddie and Brian, they used to sort of sing it simultaneously. So Paul and I did that on all of the parts. I suspect Roger sang those parts as well, as well, but we only had 2 voices and Queen had 3. And then I put the really high falsetto stuff on top, which, that was an experience.
Yeah, they're high, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are very high. I think that one of them is like A5 or something like that. Yeah. And
when I have to do it, I just massively cheat. I either slow everything down and sing it an octave lower, and then speed everything back up, or I or I just get Melodyne out and just poke my vocal all the way up because my falsetto is nowhere near getting into that range. But it's absolutely essential, isn't it, for Queen harmonies? Type of harmony. If you don't have those higher register notes, they don't cut through the mix anywhere near as effectively as they do. Like it sounds okay a cappella when you don't have those bits in. The moment you stick them in, though, they just transform into these into Queen harmonies, and you think, yeah, really, without Roger in the mix there, the Queen wouldn't really sound like Queen. So just like it's another thing where you have to say, yeah, that the balance of the band is really, really important. You can't really underestimate anyone's sort of contribution,
particularly in the early albums. Roger's super ultra falsetto, whatever it is he's doing, because it's a good octave above what I can get, and I got a relatively high range, and it's just mad on the early days, and on this track how high Roger can go.
And I mean that is the Queen sound, isn't it? But
I was sounding more like Mickey Mouse. You know, he has some astonishing power there. We took loads and loads of runs at it to try and, it was like the film, how many more Galileos? It was how many more R's? The game was sort of really trying to scrutinise this, listening to it on forensic studio monitors, on headphone, just trying to really get into it. But it sounds different every time. But the first, what we in essence did was we got one that we thought was the right approach and then repeated it. We had to sing it every time. But interestingly, the really high falsetto on the first flash, you can only really hear it on the so it's really nuanced. And I think it's a great example of the interplay within their voices. It's a major feature of the record, isn't it? I mean, does it have a chorus that, this record,
it's kind of got it's got the slow middle 8 bit, and it's got the kind of crescendo-y bit where it goes Freddie goes very high. But yeah, it's a very untraditional song, is it? I mean, without the soundtrackness of it, as Jay said, it's not really a song. Yeah. And like We Will Rock You, Flash has become part of the culture, hasn't it? If you went down the street and went up to a random person and went Flash, you're more than likely going to get an back at you. It's one of those things that's not just the floor cleaning that's done that. It's the actual track and the movie that's certainly become more high profile as the years have gone on.
Tony, you said that got your friend to do the bass line. Now when I hear the bass line, I don't think I've listened to the rest of it, because it sounds to me like it's just going dun 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 dun. Which, I mean, it is a good. I mean, I think it's actually quite iconic, even though it's only just one note. What happens in the rest of it? It doesn't. Does it do that all the way through?
I don't think Les Deakified it, really. I think he was just sort of kind of underpinning it because we were on a bit of a tight time frame. But Deaky, what can you say about him apart from...
I'm going to say this has one of my favourite Deaky moments in it. I think the bit in the final bridge where it's just a man with a man's courage and he's playing the bass, then he sits off it for like a whole bar. He just doesn't play. And then he does that little doo-doo, 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 like little tiny little trips at the end of the lines, and they're just absolute magical. In fact, I have to say that bridge is perhaps one of my favourite bits of Queen melody and everything. I think it's an absolutely, because I was listening it on the way to work with Flash, the original one on, and I was thinking, God, it really is great, that bit. And I was just remembering how much I love that Deaky little drop of bass line. It's like he's been disciplined enough to go do 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 for 5 minutes, and now he's just lets it go. Yeah, I'm still the absolute dogs.
That bit's great as well. The way that Roger delays coming in, he misses the first couple of bars, and then the drums kick in once it's kind of already going. Really lovely. Again, Roger just totally playing for the song.
It's a beautiful chord progression as well, isn't it? It's because it's kind of shifting key center quite a bit there and coming back, and and Brian sings the second part of it as well, and he's kind of got that weird Brian May voice when he's doing it. It seems a little bit strained, and
Yeah.
But somehow it's ace, isn't it? Back in the day when Brian was doing stuff like that, I used to really enjoy hearing his voice pop up in that way. I think it's a magic moment, that bit.
That surprised me that he sings that bit. That really surprised me. I don't think I'd ever realised.
Yeah, no one but the pure in heart, isn't it? And it's no one but the pure in heart.
I should have got someone else to sing it really on the thing. That would have been more consistent. Oh well.
Well, I was quite surprised I didn't get the phone call in, or me or Jay,
Very high, though.
Yeah, that's true. It's out of my range to be.
Well, I might.
Yeah.
But it adds, that's another sort of Queenism where they're adding new dimensions. They're always sort of mixing it. They're always doing something, adding that detail, which is, I can't really think of anyone else who does it as much as they do.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Flash documentary where they sort of talk about and they have bits of Brian talking about it and playing the piano, and then it clips to the other guy. What's he called? What's the main star's name? Sam Jones.
Sam Jones.
And
Jay Jones.
Yes, and all the disagreements he had. It's Ted kind of helped make it a bit more iconic as well, didn't it? By sort of having the Ted film, by having Sam Jones in it, and it's like, and it's that there's obviously the guy who writes Family Guy is obviously a massive Queen fan, because there's so many Queen references in his work, like the News the World album cover and one of the episodes of Family Guy, and so he's obviously highly affected by that. But Flash is one of those films, isn't it? It didn't do very well, but it's just grown in stature over the years. And the greatest thing for me and Jay, it's literally one of my favourite memories of my entire life, is going round Jay's house for Jay's birthday, and his dad had a VHS player, which was like unheard of, and we watched Flash on VHS around for Jay's birthday, like back in the day, and it was like
Betamax as well.
Was it Betamax? It was in the Betamax VHS wars, and it's like, it was absolutely amazing, wasn't it? That
The younger listeners can do their research and work out what you were talking about.
What's a tape?
Yeah, what's a tape?
Yeah,
what do you mean you couldn't just put on any one of a myriad of films instantly whenever you wanted?
The kids are into defunct formats. They're out buying cassettes now.
True. Yeah. But it got on greatest hits, didn't it?
Yeah, amazingly.
Yeah,
I think it deserves to be.
So.
Yeah.
Was it number 10? Did it get? Was it 10 or 11? Did it peak at?
It was a top 10 single.
Was it a top 10 single? It did.
And qualified.
And it is good. It is good. It is a good song. It sonically sounds pretty neat. It's got some good hooks in it. Like I said, it's got one of my favourite bits of melody in ever. And it's just, full of iconic quotes, including Brian Blessed has dined out on the Gordons Alive for, 50 years. So, it's not bad,
of course, that was where we put the call out for our listeners, and we got inundated with people contributing, so I cannot thank you all enough. We'll do a full credit list at the end, but I'm sure those that sent stuff in will recognise you. Obviously, everyone tried to do the Gordons Alive, so we could only have one of those in, so I apologise if you didn't get that one, but I think I got a little bit of everyone who sent something in.
Nice.
I believe.
It's great.
I reserve the right to have, because it was a bit of an organisational nightmare of like, who sent this and putting that in that folder, and then editing it all together and making it sound okay.
You sound like one of my students making excuses.
Right.
You just should have been more organised.
I should have been, but better file husbandry.
I bet Tony knows all about this as well.
I couldn't possibly comment. All my students are so well trained; they would never not file things properly or name properly,
Oh,
or lose their work the night before handing, or something like that.
Yes.
Oh, my computer's crashed.
So, Tony, you said that Flash was your first album. Was this your first? Is this what got you into Queen?
The thing that kind of captivated me really was the film. As a kid, age 10. Liked sci-fi. In fact, actually, my first memory of this is vivid. I was at my grandparents'. We were kind of about to leave. They had Top of the Pops on, and the video came on, and this thing just pulled me back into the room. And you can imagine, whilst it was a song, the video had all of this footage in, and again, sort of, I don't know who made the decisions about the bits of the film that went in, but I'm going to guess that there was something to do with they were probably looking at holistically, because I have seen a different version, an original video with different audio bites in from the film kind of really made sense. So you'd see Sam Jones, Flash with Baron on this disc thing, and they're falling around, and then at the end, Dale's going, "Flash, Flash, I love you," and the jeopardy. We've only got 14 hours to save the Earth, and I was watching. There's no way I wasn't going to the cinema to watch the film,
right? Yeah,
but actually, then. Not too long after Greatest Hits came out, and interestingly, you realised, or I realised, this is real time, sort of 1981. I was bought that for Christmas, when it came out, and I realised that this assembly of work, I'd actually heard all of those songs on it before, but not realised that they were all Queen.
I think that's a very similar story to myself. Yeah,
it all makes sense, and then. Even though there's such eclectic aspects to their style, they still obviously all sound like a Queen because they've got the vocals, distinctive vocal. No one sounds like Freddie, do they? You hear his voice, it's him and Brian's guitar. Yeah. So it all sort of coalesced really at that time.
From 1981 onwards, you were in the Queen world in real time.
I remember getting Under Pressure, and I'd probably got. There was 8 albums before Flash, and I bought those. I was maybe getting one a month. I was an absolute glutton, and anything Queen related, I was, sort of hoovering up.
It was back in the time. It's funny. I had this exact conversation about, you had to save up like for a month to try an album. It wasn't like you could go out and go, right, I'm going to get this sort of famous. I remember me and Jay going to the shops and Jay buying It Bites, Eat Me in St. Louis on cassette or something like that. And he was just like, don't really like this album. We're going to have to get into it because, that's the album for the month now.
Well, yeah, and I did 6 months later.
Yeah, 6 months later you're into it. Yeah.
Understanding what it was about.
Curiously, of course, produced by Mac.
Oh, indeed.
The same as this, isn't it? But
for me, this track it's so Queen. There is no other band that could. I actually think Queen probably are at least half, if not more, responsible for the success of the film. I don't think with a different soundtrack, you haven't got Flash Gordon. It's the sort of conviction that you do not get anywhere else. Conviction to a song. I know, like Bicycle Race or something, or Flash in itself. There is no other band that will put everything on the line for something so silly, and that conviction just it totally sells it, and so we all believe in that world because they do. I just think that's the special thing for me on this track.
Yeah, that's the special thing about Queen, isn't it? They can be camp. They can be silly, but ultimately, that they're actually quite serious about the craft. Particularly, I have to say, Brian is probably the sort of most serious out of all of them. And this is kind of his project as well, the Flash soundtrack. And perhaps it was a project too far as well. I think it probably did push the band a little bit into the kind of, God, this is too knackering. I'm too old for this shit, to quote another film. That it was like, they were, I think that... Brian was probably, too serious.
They were massively productive, weren't they? At this time.
Oh my God,
this was astonishing.
It's insane for this early bit of the 80s. What you got the game Flash, Hot on the Heels, Under Pressure, and then
well, the work kind of far off either.
No, it's but the kind of I think Hot Space is probably the place where you feel that the Crackers kind of. Like, because the game feels so like a really congruent piece of work, doesn't it? And I think but I think it's that it's too much. Maybe it was just Flash. I think was probably just a little bit too much of a project to take on when they've all got young families.
Well, they had
the
guy, didn't they? Who was the composer that was interviewed about it all?
Yeah, he had 2 days to finish.
Yeah, Howard Blake. So he did, a lot of the actual soundtracking that I suspect that Queen were. They said they're going to do everything, but way too much work unless you're a professional film composer.
But it was produced by May and Mac. You get the feeling that Brian was definitely had form for going off into the studio and doing, working through things like the Prophet song, so you almost get a feeling that Brian was invested in this project in a similar way. And it's his executive producers, Queen.
Did they have any idea how, like, camp and everything the film was going to end up looking?
Well, they'd seen it before. He'd seen a huge chunk of it.
Okay.
Star Wars was massive at the time, wasn't it? And one of the reasons why Star Wars was Star Wars and written by George Lucas is because De Laurentiis had the rights to Flash Gordon, and really, he wanted to make Flash Gordon, but he couldn't because Laurentiis had the rights to it. So he ended up making Star Wars. So it's almost like Flash Gordon, the film, is almost the reason why we have Star Wars. But it's so curious, isn't it? The way that it's done in a really old-fashioned way as well, considering Star Wars has been done at this point, and it's done in like this, it's like absolutely epic, and it still, looks pretty good today, even though it's quite hard to say what's original and what's been added on since.
Yeah.
But it still kind of looks great, even if you sort of watch the actual kind of proper copies of the film. Whereas this is
Star Wars, you're saying?
Yeah, this is Star Wars. Whereas this one looks, is almost like being deliberately kind of feels like a sort of, it's trying to pay homage to the kind of 60s and 50s versions.
It was all
of
in the
Flash
studio.
Gordon.
I don't think there's any locations whatsoever on the whole thing. It's all painted backgrounds and sound stages.
Do you think that the labels camp and kitsch, sort of were added retrospectively? Because I mean, at age 10, I wouldn't have had a clue. It was just vibrant and alluring.
I mean, it was based on a book, wasn't it? A sort of a Flash book that was pretty racy at the time. It was sort of like, not Mills and Boons, perhaps even more kind of a little bit more racier than that. The sort of the kind of the source material. I know obviously Flash Gordon's older than that, but there was a kind of source material that had the Dale Arden character in and stuff like that.
Well, to me, I mean, it's clearly a directorial choice. They wanted to make it in the way that they made it, and that's quite clear to me. It's a little bit like when you watch Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's they did that all in a big studio, and they were paying homage to those films that come. So I think they did make that choice, which is probably why they didn't go with Nicholas Rugg and other directors before settling on Mike Hodges. Because, you've got to really, it's a lot of money, and to buy into that kind of concept, I think you've got to be fully committed, because there is always that, but it is Batman in the 60s, is that cool? And as Queen, they were probably thinking, is this cool? Do we want to be attached to this? So I think it's a hell of that's why I say about the conviction for everyone that got involved, because it wouldn't have worked if just one of the elements just been like, I don't know, let's try and make this a little bit cooler.
Well, it's almost, that's what happened to Hot Space, wasn't it, really? You could say that there wasn't full commitment from everyone to kind of finish the Hot Space job off.
Yeah. They all went for it with this, didn't they? Yeah. I mean, everyone committed, and, the drama in it is remarkable. The musical techniques.
There's an awful lot of film in whatever it is, 3 minutes. And then the nearest thing I can think of, it's, which is a much bigger work, is The War of the Worlds, the musical version, Jeff Wayne's one, which is fantastic music interspersed with all the leitmotif stuff for the different characters in it and the narration throughout.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because I can't think of many examples of, you would think that this, because it was a success, even if it wasn't like the success that they were hoping for, there was success attached to it, and you'd think that would maybe have opened the doors to more bands doing soundtracks, or maybe they were, but I can't think of anything anywhere on this scale or this epic since.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be, but I can't think of anything.
Well, they get watered down, don't they? It's normally like the Bond theme. You'll have a famous act that do the Bond theme. In fact, I'm quite surprised Queen never did that. But, it can't have been too long after that Duran Duran did View to a Kill or something. And then of course, you've got,
Yeah, that's the closest.
I think Bond was on the slide a bit there, though, wasn't it? From that point, it got reinvented, with its Brosnan.
Timothy Dalton,
yeah. Well, Timothy Dalton, of course, is in both. He's in this and then went on to be the Bond. So that is,
So we were talking about my entry into Queen, and actually there's this idea, one of the things we found researching the book is there's the period that you're socialized into for example, Queen, or for example, James Bond, something that's a sort of long running, tends to inform your perspective of what it should be. So you find people who were socialised to Queen in the 70s, preferring the 70s over the 80s, and then people who were socialising Queen in the 80s. I think at that point, you've kind of got to realise that Queen was so well established and greatest hits marked the start of the 80s as well. So you don't get this thing where, well, I only like the 80s, I don't like 70s Queen. We now find people, who actually, we found people who, very young people who preferred Adam Lambert to Freddie, because that was their first experience. It might seem strange to, people who grew up with Queen, with Freddie, but, a lot of Queen fans now, if you're, 30, Freddie died in 91, you would have been you'd be 33 now if you were 0 then.
Yeah, our guest that sang Somebody to Love, she's one of my students. She's like 21 or 20, and it's like, so she didn't have the 80s or 70s kind of connection in there, and it's interesting because then I think it's random what kind of period you're into. Although I do think that the 70s stuff probably stands a little bit stronger than the kind of 80s stuff.
Matthew, that's just your socialization. Were you not listening?
It might be, but I think there's more of it. Yeah. There's more of it, isn't there?
You've mentioned the Queen book. So for the benefit of the listeners, you just want to go into that. What is the book?
It's called The Artistry and Legacy of Queen, and it's scheduled for publication 12th of December this year, but I'm mindful that people will be listening to these podcasts for many years to come. So it will be ancient history, sort of in 30 years. There'll be this is for people listening in 30 years. The book is called The Artistry and Legacy of Queen.
In 2024.
It was a bestseller.
Imagine that.
I've heard that if you get normalised in the 2020s, you actually start preferring the Recovering Queen's covers to the original Queen tracks.
It's a phenomenon none of us could have predicted.
It's a phenomena that we could have predicted. It's just
that's a theory yet to be proven, but looking back in 30 years' time, it could well be the case.
Is this because you said your current place in the at the university being a Queen scholar? Is this an academic text type thing?
It is, yeah. It's actually so myself and my good friend and colleague Professor Eva Mazieska, who's like an academic super heavyweight. We ran a conference a few years ago, Queen conference, and it was really. The first academic Queen conference, and it grew into the idea of an edited collection. So we sort of put the word out to amongst scholarly communities, academic communities, and we got people saying, "Yes, I'd like to write about this." I think 13 Queen scholars from around the world, so Australia, New Zealand. There's very few academic texts on Queen. We're doing something about that now. We're actually inviting people to apply to do an MPhil PhD in Queen studies. So if anyone fancies being Dr. Queen.
So they would get in touch with yourself at how would they reach out?
trig@uclan.ac.uk.
There you go. If you fancy being Dr. Queen, who doesn't? But this was made in 2024. So things may have changed in the future.
There'll be thousands of academic books on Queen, and we've started it here, haven't we?
Yeah.
Tony,
that's
can I ask you a quick question? So, what defines an academic book on Queen, or how is it that is academized, if you like, from just being like, I like Queen because they were really great?
In part, you can separate commercial books by the fact that they are, maybe need to be entertaining or exciting, and have really good pictures in and stuff, so Queen books and books written by people close to Queen. So they're often biographical. One of the things about the academic books is they don't have to be entertaining. So, you can maybe, having trouble nodding off one night, you could maybe pull out one of the books that I've produced. But no, they're analytical. One of the things I would say is that they're analytical.
Yeah, it's like if you want to go deep with Queen, essentially, and get extremely detailed either about any aspect lyrically or the production, the Rogers drums. As I've got a whole book on Rogers drums, for example. Fascinating stuff to the right mind.
One of the chapters that I was involved in the writing of is about fandom. So actually, you're not necessarily focusing in on Queen, but how, you can't really write about an academic book on Queen without considering the fans. So actually, we mentioned in it this podcast. We're looking at sort of different types of fandom, and this is as an active consumption, where instead of just might sit and listen to Queen songs, there's different sort of extents of fandom. And one of the types of sort of fandom is active fandom, which is in essence what we're all kind of doing here, really. When I was growing up, people would go on about, the Beatles and the Stones and the Who and, but actually, except with the exception of the Beatles, there's this thing called Chartmasters, which looks at the best-selling or the most successful artists of all time. And as time's gone on, Queen have just climbed and climbed and climbed this, and they're now, there's only one other band that's more successful, which is the Beatles. Queen are actually digitally significantly, on all the major platforms, significantly more consumed than even the Beatles.
Right.
So their trajectory is actually taking them, if things carry on as they are, it'll be a long time. But
are they just taking off? They're
Absolutely.
just sort of getting going.
Well, if you look at the figures, a really interesting figure that I saw on Statistica was this post Bohemian Rhapsody, the film, is just how that pushed them into Spotify charts, and they've stayed there ever since. They were nowhere before, like in the streaming world. They were literally sort of out of it. And since that Bohemian Rhapsody film, it's put them just in that major league where they're creeping into the top 50 of Spotify, and that's major sort of traffic for a band that aren't actively releasing stuff.
Active releasing stuff. But I think the touring with Adam Lambert and how Brian and Roger have kept Queen alive, essentially kept the songs alive for another generation. I think they've got to take some credit for that push, because they could have retired quite happily and they would be having a lovely life. And but it without all the activity that they've done almost relentlessly, since Freddie passed away, they wouldn't be where they are now, and Queen wouldn't be where they are.
Yeah, their legacy management is really skillful.
Yeah.
If you sort of look at the team, their decisions are really, really good. Well, I mean, you can't really argue with, they're pretty much as successful as you can get.
And part of what they've done to keep the tracks in the public eye is, of course, the Flash advert. So I think with the exploitation of the catalogue, it'll be only amazing to see what Sony Music have got planned, because they've got £1 billion to make back somehow. So I think there's probably a whole episode in what Sony Music might be doing on that. But we do have to bring it back to those scores on the doors now, gentlemen, for the track Flash. So, Matt, what would you say for Flash?
Ooh. It is a big track. It's a greatest hit. I think probably it's the lowest scoring greatest hit, isn't it? Of greatest hits, I would imagine, for me. So I because of the beautiful bridge, I'm going to give it a 7.
A 7. Jay, where are you going with it?
I am going higher. But quickly, before I do, Tony, it's been fascinating hearing what you've got to say about Queen. We haven't even asked you about Tim Staffel, which is I've got and so many other questions. So for me, I'd love to have you back on the podcast at some other point in the future to discuss further. But we're only talking about Flash tonight, and I think what a great track. Love it. It's not the best track the Queen have ever done, but it is great. So it's a 9.
It's a 9. Right, I'm going with Matt on this one. It's a great track. It was better than I thought. It more complicated than I was going to thought. Than I thought, but it's a 7 for me. And finally, Tony, before you give us your scores on the door for Flash, if you also want to give us a bit of context for where you might go for a 10 within the Queen catalogue, and also maybe a 1 if because you can't have the highs without the lows. So what you giving Flash?
I think every Queen track is a 10 compared to all other artists.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Knowing kind of how you score things here, I think 10 would be most of Queen 2.
Yep.
I think they're indisputable, aren't they? I don't think it's possible to give anything like a 0 or a 1, but I'm gonna go, having spent quite a lot of time with this track recently and dug, scratched the surface and seen the genius of what's gone into this. I think it's a 9 from me.
It's a 9, yeah.
It's a 9.
Fair enough.
Tony, you're right. It's a very clever track. You've nailed it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's 9.
It's an interesting one. It's a difficult one to score. It's a difficult one to score.
It is a hard one to score because it's got some great bits.
Well, you're scoring the film as well, aren't you? In context.
But of course, we're not just scoring ourselves. We're not just thanking Tony for coming on. We've got a whole bunch of people to thank for this one. So all you lovely listeners that came in, we've got to thank Craig Mulhall. We've got Owen Ling. Loza May wrote in, if that is your real name. Roddy Rutherford. We've got Harry Hussey. A lot of these do sound like I'm reading out a rude word, doesn't it? I'm getting trolled, but no.
Yeah. No offence to the readers that you've just read out.
Yeah, sorry about that. If that is your real name, Richard Hearn, who came up trumps with his effort, the incredible Moog Gravit. I can't thank him enough for the introduction, and of course, featuring on the music side of things. I think it was Paul Hutchinson, who I didn't realise had contributed as well. I think you said there, Tony. Les Gillen on the bass guitar, and of course. Tony Rigg. So thank you so much for your contribution, Tony. It's been an absolute joy for you to appear on the show. I suspect you may be back if we can organise that for a future episode. That would be excellent to have you back.
Love this podcast. Yeah, I've listened to all of the every episode, and I recommend everyone else does the same if you like Queen.
You should be getting my application for Queen PhD.
Excellent.
It'll help my career, no end.
So here it is, Flash featuring all those people and me. Please enjoy Flash. Here we go.
Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
How peaceful it looks.
Most effective, Your Majesty. Will you destroy this Earth?
Later. I like to play with things a while. Before annihilation.
Savior of the universe. Flash. He'll save every one of us.
This morning's unprecedented solar eclipse is no cause for alarm.
Only Dr. Hans Zarkov, formerly at NASA, has provided any explanation.
What's happening, Flash? Flash! Ah! He's a miracle! Gordon's alive! Flash! Ah! King of the impossible! He's for every one of us! Stand for every one of us! He'll save with a mighty hand every man, every woman, every child with a mighty Flash!
General Carla, Flash Gordon approaching.
What do you mean, Flash Gordon approaching? Open fire! All weapons! Dispatch 4 Rocket Ajax to bring back his body.
Flash! Ah! just a man with a man's courage. He knows nothing but a man, but he can never